everybody. Happy Tuesday. Happy new DC Comics Day. And happy early Comics Review Day.
Yes, happy new and soon to be new Comics Day.
That's right. So, as you can see, we have a bunch of lovely new comics that we can't wait to tell you about. I'm Jason.
I'm Andy.
And we're with Infinity Flux Comics out of Chattanooga, Tennessee. Every Tuesday, we do this relatively spoiler-free show where we have read most of the big new comics people are waiting to hear about, and we divulge this information to you so that you can go in your store tomorrow and just know a lot more about what you want and why you might want something or not.
Yep.
Okay, so let's begin. Andy, what do you want to go over first?
I will go over first a book I've been looking forward to. This is Fantastic Four Life Story number 1, The 60s. So if you remember from now, everything now seems like 10 years ago. But I think a couple of years ago they did, Chip Zdarsky did the book Spider-Man Life Story, which I really enjoyed.
That was awesome. That was really
basically
cool.
These life story comics now, I guess we have 2 of them now that I hope they do more, are the lives of the characters, retelling of, in Spider-Man, it was Spider-Man, now this time it's Fantastic Four, in real time. So, Fantastic Four were invented in the 60s. This first issue is set in the 60s. Presumably, if it goes the same way as the Spider-Man one, issue 2 will be the 70s, 3 will be the 80s, and the characters really age.
They do like 1 decade an issue.
Yeah, and it's very cool to see how the writer, in this case it's Mark Russell, retrofit some key stories in these characters' lives into now different points in the characters' lives, in different ages, and just different ways in their development of their powers and everything. So this first issue, it's kind of the hard part, I would imagine, about doing these too, is your first issue is like, how do you not just tell
the origin
in the time that the origin was originally told? This could easily, you could probably pick up this series at issue 2 and have only read Fantastic Four number 1 from the 60s. But this one actually does bring in some new elements to the origin of the Fantastic Four. Now, it's pretty fast paced. It covers, roughly 10 years in a single issue. So we see from Reed Richards, but in this one he's actually kind of tasked by John F. Kennedy to kind of head up the space program.
Gotta win the space race.
Yeah, so it's cool. They do kind of insert things that really tie the book into the decade that it's from. So you've got Kennedy in this, you've got the space race, you do have the moon landing, that kind of stuff. But in this, we have our classic story of the Fantastic Four. The family goes up and gets hit by cosmic rays.
Radiation.
Now, the really cool twist they put on this is Reed Richards has a vision while he is in space. Like, right when he gets blasted with these rays, he sees something. And basically, it's a herald of doom. If you know, that play on words went the wrong direction. Not Doctor Doom. But he sees something that really bothers him. And it's cool because since it's over the course of a decade, you see, like, year after year, he'll see things that will remind him of this thing. And eventually he goes to some higher-ups and he describes this thing. And it seems like, even though this is a fun, like, decade by decade telling of Fantastic Four, they are giving it a through line too, which is this thing that's been bothering Reed Richards. I really like this issue. I think innately, just like the Spider-Man one, the further it goes, the kind of more interesting and creative they get. Because in the Spider-Man one, I mean, he got up into, like, his 50s, 60s, 70s.
Yeah, age was setting in.
Yeah, and so the Clone Saga was going on during when Peter Parker was in his 40s and stuff, and it really shook up the way that we see the different storylines. So I think this is going to be really cool, and a fun, new Fantastic Four story, because we don't get as many of those as we do with say, Spider-Man or the X-Men or whatever, retellings of their origins. So I definitely recommend this one. I believe, just like the other one, it will probably go through,
I think 6 issues probably.
usually 6.
So through the 2010 to
Yeah.
2020 period, I think that's where the Spider-Man one ended.
Yeah. So we've got some really cool variants for this as well. We have the Martin variant, which is very mid-century modern, really cool variant. We have the Brett Booth variant, where you definitely see the thing that is haunting Reed Richards, which is done in a very cool way. I mean, it's scary how they do it. And then we have the 1 in 25 Rivera cover that we are selling to our customers for $20. It's a really nice variant, though.
A little bit of a Norman Rockwell feel to it.
Yeah, and that's the fun way they kind of do all these is, like I said, they're very tied in with the decade that they're taking on. So I can't wait for like 80s and 90s grunge, Fantastic Four, where Johnny Storm's wearing his leather jacket and all the patches on it and sleeves cut off. It'd be great.
Okay, so I read Wonder Girl #1. This is Yara Flor's first ongoing series, and I have a lot to say about this book. First off, the art in this book is fantastic. Joelle Jones is writing the book. She's also doing all the art, and she is pulling out all the stops. I mean, just flipping through it, you can tell the amount of time and quality and just creativity Joelle Jones put into the interior art. It's not one where the cover looks cool and you get in and you're like, oh, this is just kind of, you know, a much quicker style of the cover. I think the style on the interior, some of the interior is even better than some of the cover, in my opinion. So the last time we saw Yara Flor, she had her Future State two-part series where she was already Wonder Woman. And she seemed confident. She didn't, even though her history goes back to Brazil, she seemed like she didn't grow up there. And since then it has been revealed that she grew up in Boise, Idaho. And so in Infinite Frontier #0, which is really the last time you see her until this, she's boarding a plane. She's leaving her aunt behind and she's going to Brazil. She pretty much explains, there's something pulling me there. She knows she's from there, but she doesn't have any recollection of it. So this opens up with a scene from her past that she doesn't even know. So this is a memory. She's there. Her eyes are open. But, you know, the Yara Flor present day does not remember this. And it's because it's a really traumatic past. Something very bad happened in Brazil. You meet some very brutal, armor-clad villains. You get to see who I believe is Yara Flor's mother and possibly her final fate, and why Yara Flor would have been whisked away by an ant to Boise, Idaho to never return. But at this point, she has to return. So there's a lot of exposition on the plane. She's very nervous, so she's very chatty with the other people on the plane, even when they don't want her to be, which is a really good way to get some exposition out there.
Just have them be a blabbermouth.
yeah, and the whole thing's a joke, but you also get a sense that she's a bit nervous. So she gets off the plane in Brazil, and, you know, nothing's going on with her. It's just normal. It's just like anyone goes anywhere. But right away, there are like worldwide leaders who get alerts. And you get to see us. It's several leaders worldwide. And we're not necessarily talking about political leaders, more leaders of grand societies. And they're like, oh man, Yara Flor has made it to Brazil. You know, it's like all this stuff has been set in motion for her returning to her land. So while she's there, it's a little uneventful at first. You know, I don't know what she was expecting, but she does eventually get her chance to do her first heroic. And she meets a local who she becomes friends with. In addition to the leaders who are alerted to this, there's a part where there's a splash page of different heroes and different people, like from Superman to Oracle to Nightwing. It's a really good splash page of all these people who are just like, their ears perk. You know, you can tell there's been a major shift in the DC universe with her on her way to take up the mantle of Wonder Woman. So look for that splash page. It's really good. So in the end, she is sort of led by just these feelings to this grand waterfall scene where something happens. It's very much a cliffhanger that might leave her in great danger,
Mhm.
or it might be the beginning of her quest. And I'll say this is one of these books where it ends with the title, which is Homecoming Part One.
Mhm.
And next issue, it just sort of promises that, you saw planes, you saw Brazil, like trafficky, all that. It looks like next issue is going to be not that. It looks like she's heading to the fantastic part of Brazil that probably no one's ever
Mhm.
seen. So that's my. I told you I had a lot to say about it. It's a good first issue. I actually read it 2 times. I liked it better the second time, to tell you the truth. There's a lot packed in, and we have a variant. This is the Evely variant. Real different take on her. Looks a little more older and wizened
Mhm.
in this. There are some ratio variants too that we already sold out of. There is also this great blank variant that has texture. The water. It seems like water has something to do with her. Not necessarily her power, but her past and history. A lot of great rivers in Brazil and great waterfalls too.
I definitely think that Yara Flor is going to be. I don't know. It feels like she has been created and set up in a way that she's going to be a big deal. It's not a she didn't just pop up in the last page of an issue of something. It's like, no, they've really placed foundations to
Yeah.
build upon that I feel like they have long-term plans for this character.
Yeah, I mean, she's primed for something because, like, let's talk about other DC characters. Say, like, Punchline. Like, Punchline got her one shot, and that's great, and she is still important.
Mm-hmm.
She's still mentioned in all kinds of things, even talk about the future, they bring her up.
Mm-hmm.
But Yara Flor's already getting her first ongoing series.
Yeah.
By the very person who created her and did all the future state stuff. So I agree. She's primed to become something. I think creatively it'll probably work, but at the same time, DC knows to make it work for sure, they got to pour a lot of money into it.
Yeah.
And that's what I see.
Yeah. Well, the DC book, one of the ones I read this week, was, I think it's not even called, is it? No, it's just Legends of the Dark Knight. I keep wanting to say Batman Legends of the Dark Knight. This is just Legends of the Dark Knight. And this is interesting because this is written and drawn by Derek Robertson, who was the artist, the original artist on Garth Ennis's The Boys. So I came into it. I'm like, DC's not gonna like push it that far to that level. And really, what you see is that he is a great storyteller. Um, so this is a not necessarily out of continuity, but this isn't in the current continuity, current ongoing stories of Batman right now. This is kind of your timeless um, Batman in the classic version of Gotham with the classic version of the villains. And a new character has shown up on the scene in Gotham and is basically a supplier of poisonous gas. And it seems really funny at first until there is a page and it's like, I think it's Gordon talking, and he's like, all the villains use gases. And it shows like a big splash of like Penguin's holding his umbrella and gas is coming out of it. Joker's got gas.
For sure.
Mr. Freeze has his own version of it. Poison Ivy. And you go like, oh yeah, I guess they would all kind of need a supplier for this kind of stuff.
A gas monger.
Yeah. And so there's this new character that wears a gas mask that is brokering deals with all of the villains in Gotham. And so, of course, it's up to Batman to figure out what this is. And they have been the gas monger has been now that you've said that,
There we go.
has been double crossed. And so of course there is Batman trying to figure out who this is and how to stop them, and then you have a lot of infighting with the villains because they all need the gas and need their supply. So it's a really good issue. it is not the like world-shaking, groundbreaking stuff that's going on in Batman right now. This is very much like you want to read a Batman story that feels like maybe it could be an episode of Batman the animated series, or an arc of Batman the animated series. It's so classic in that way, with the classic um, like rogues gallery that you know exactly what they look like and everything. So I liked it. I'll be interested to see. I believe this first story is maybe 3 issues long, and I think then after that, like a different creator takes over. But I'll be interested to see. Is this mysterious character someone we know, or how this fleshes out? Because I feel like he does have a very interesting story to tell, and this is just kind of starting it off. So I liked it. It's definitely kind of a supplemental Batman story to all the other stuff. But if you are really wanting just a fun, easy to read, pretty all ages. I think there's one guy who breathes in some of the gas and barfs. Other than that, it's
rude.
Yeah, more rude than like, because Batman, like the current one, can get pretty rough. This one's fairly, I wouldn't say all ages, but older kids would enjoy it too. And I believe there's a variant for it, and I think we already sold out of all the variants.
Okay, so I read Shang-Chi #1. This is from the same team that just finished doing Shang-Chi's 5-part miniseries, which I greatly enjoyed. I thought that miniseries was awesome. In the miniseries, Shang-Chi finds out that he has a sister who is the head of this whole organization, and he has other people who are now considered his siblings. They're the Five Weapons Society. By the end of the last miniseries, Shang-Chi basically has taken over the Five Weapons Society, and this is a society set up by his father, who is evil. He's long dead, very evil. Tried to make Shang-Chi evil. So Shang-Chi, now being the head of the organization, has decided to dismantle it, but it's such a long-reaching. I mean, this is an international cartel that basically he has to use it to kind of destroy itself. So it's like different parts of the organization are working where they kick money up to him, but they don't really listen to him. And so he has to find out, oh, there's drug smugglers over here who are my people. Well, let's go in there and let's use our knowledge to stop them. Because if you just say, hey, stop, they're not going to stop. They'll figure out that he's using the organization for good. Meanwhile, his siblings, the Five Weapons Society, they're hilarious. They are not at all heroes. These are just tried and true villains who, because they're honor bound to him, are now going, okay, you want us to do what? But they have to do it. So they do not like his leader style. They don't think he takes his role serious enough because he's trying to make the world a better place instead of just making profit. So he'll give them jobs. He's like, okay, we'll go figure out what this guy knows. And they'll pretty much be torturing some guy. He'll have to stop them. He'll be like, no, don't do it that way. And they're like, Shang-Chi, why are you our leader? You won't let us do it. We'll get you the information if you let us do it our way. So there's a lot of drama to this, but there's also humor. The issue starts out, Shang-Chi is actually on a date. I didn't see the issue starting that way.
No.
But he is on a legitimate date with some girl he met who he likes. And of course, the whole thing gets ruined by his family members because they're trying to get information out of somebody. And it's a really funny opening. But from there, it doesn't stay, humorous the whole time. They get the info they need and they head to where this one drug cartel is. And it's being led by a new sort of minor villain. His name is King Wildman.
That's a great name.
Yeah, so they get there and Spider-Man shows up. They run to Spider-Man and Spider-Man's like, hey, I'm looking for some drug cartel I've heard about. And he's like, oh, well, here they are. It's but you could tell Shang-Chi's a little worried because even though he's trying to take these guys down, they're kind of linked to him now. So they get in there. King Wildman, his power is, I don't think this is revealing too much to what his power is. He has a potion that when he drinks it or he gives it to anyone, it makes him really strong and just nuts. Like they just attack everything they want.
Huh.
So let's just say the wrong person gets the potion, and Shang-Chi and his people have to kind of try to put him down. It's a fun fight. But in the end, Spider-Man does learn a little too much, and there's a really good scene towards the end where he asks Shang-Chi, he's like, "We've been friends for ages." I mean, they literally, I mean, Marvel team-ups and stuff from the 70s. He's like, "Why are you a part of this? Like, are you still a good guy?" And it's kind of left, where he doesn't know. Spider-Man doesn't know if his friend's good or not. And that's the whole premise to this book is I think the first arc is called Shang-Chi versus the Marvel Universe, where because he is now a leader of this organization and his siblings won't listen to him very well, he almost is in a way a villain, even though his heart's in the right place. So issue 2 at the end, it promises there's apparently a black market auction that only villainous organization can go to. Well, Shang-Chi gets an invite because they're auctioning off a cosmic cube. So obviously he's going to want to get that away from everyone, but it also promises that Captain America shows up to just kind of beat everyone up. And so you can see they're setting Shang-Chi on this collision course with other heroes, which I think is really interesting instead of just making it hero versus villain that you've seen a million times. So I think it's fun. I think anybody who wants a good Shang-Chi book, this is the one. So let's see. We got some variants here. This is the Yoon variant. I forgot to mention the what's his name, King Wildman. He's taking his orders from some other shadowy figure who might end up being a cameo of someone, but you can't see who it is. So I can't say for sure that's a first cameo.
Yeah.
It could be a villain that's well established. Here is the Super Log variant. I think this one's fantastic.
Yeah, that's been the most popular one here. People wanting it.
So yeah, look for that in your store. And here is the Cho variant. And notice it says at the bottom there, Shang-Chi versus the Marvel Universe. Spider-Man in the background. And then there is a 1 in 25 Sue variant that we are selling to our locals and pull box customers for $25. That's one of Shang-Chi's siblings. Probably the mouthiest one.
So, if you didn't read the previous Shang-Chi series, would this be too hard to pick up and figure out what's going on?
Comics have gotten smart these days. They start almost everything with like a little paragraph where it's like, if you feel lost, this quickly tells you what happened. Because in it just tells you, that he met, his family, he became the head of it now, and now he's trying to clean up the streets. It kind of tells you what I said at the beginning. And so past that, no, because then all of a sudden he's on a date. Nobody expects to start that way.
Yeah.
So
well, that's good. Yeah, because I really wanted to read the last one, but there's a lot of books to read, and that was one that you took on reading. So
yeah,
but with the movie coming out and everything, it's like, oh, this seems like a good time to be a Shang-Chi fan.
There was some really good art in that last series too.
Yeah,
so I'm expecting a lot out of this one.
Well, next up, I want to talk about Radiant Black number 4. So by issue 4, for independent series, you've pretty much got your readers for the most part. You may pick up some after the first volume comes out and everything, but this is usually we're past the hype of the number 1 and something big that happens in the number 1 and the number 2. But in the previous issue, in number 3, it promised that in issue 4 everything will change.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking about.
So I've been a big fan of Radiant Black so far, and I was excited to see. Whenever when they say something like that, immediately you get cynical, and you're like, yeah, right. I've heard this before. I've been told that Spider-Man is dead for sure so many times when they always come back. Well, with independent books, I feel like it's a little different. It's a singular vision of what's going to be happening, and I will say that something does happen in this book that is pretty earth-shaking for this series. We'll find out definitely more in the next one. But I really think that this is primed to be... I'm still very hesitant to say the next Invincible, but I think there's a lot going on here that has the potential to become one of Image's next really big series. That being said, we need to see how the next story arc goes. But this issue sets up some really interesting story elements, like our main character who's got this radiant black um, powers. It's kind of like this ball in his chest that gives him his powers. Is having these dreams, and these dreams are basically telling him, you know, you have a job to do. You have a thing that you need to go do, and if you don't, everything in your world dies. And do you accept this? And he's very hesitant about it because the thing asking him is pretty crazy. So if you were on the fence about should I, you know, what's going to be happening with this one, because we had the really big first issue and then it's been mostly story and character development, definitely check out this issue because I think this is a good indication. I think issue 4 and 5 will be big in setting the course for the rest of the series, and I still highly recommend Radiant Black to people. There's the stuff with Radiant Red in it is also super cool. We've got some great variants for this one. There's a big fight scene in this one, which I feel like we've been waiting for. We have the 1 in 25 doily variant that we are selling for $30. And then another cool thing that came out this week is I feel like the Image and the creators are so excited about where the series is going. They're like, we want to make sure that when this big reveal happens that you're able to read it. So they are doing a third printing of number 1. Along with that, we do have the 1 in 10 third printing black and white variant that we have for only $20. And then they're doing number 2 third printing. So you've got that really awesome radiant, probably meant to go like this, facing off.
Yeah.
Really cool. That one as well has the black and white variant that we have for 20. And then lastly, there is the second printing for number 3, which you get some hints there of some big stuff going down. So, yeah, definitely check out Radiant Black if you haven't yet, because they're making it very easy to get caught up with it.
All right, so who's waiting to hear about Red Room by Ed Piskor? This is a difficult one to talk about. This is such a dark and violent comic that I don't think I could review it without being at least PG-13 myself. I probably could do a better job if I was R-rated in this review. So, Ed Piskor, he did Hip Hop Family Tree. He's done X-Men Grand Design. His art is incredible. I mean, it is, when I think of indie art, I sort of picture that style. It reminds me of just like the dirty stuff your mom told you, don't read that. You know, that's too violent, that's too crazy, that's too weird.
Yeah.
And that is definitely what he's going for in this. This is like a double, maybe triple sized issue. I mean, this took me longer to read than like 3 other comics combined. The cover claims, look in the bottom of the cover there.
Yeah, I saw
it says banned in 5 countries. And I'll tell you something, I believe that. I don't know if it's true, it's probably just marketing, but I could definitely believe that. In fact, I wouldn't be surprised if this wouldn't be banned in more countries. I think these countries just haven't read it yet or heard about it yet. Because this is not a comic for children. It is very, very violent. There's a lot of torture in it, a lot of creative torture, and I'll tell you why. So what is a red room? A red room is basically an anonymous internet chat room where people can watch and they can pay through Bitcoin as people get tortured. So they can pay more money and the person will get tortured in a different way that they select. That is what a red room is. Don't expect with this. This is not a superhero comic. This is not even a regular hero comic. There are no heroes in this comic. This is more about what sort of people would run a room like that, who would have that kind of power and depravity, and who would be the performers, the people who would be committing these acts, and how would they possibly vet out new performers.
Hmm.
And there is more to the story than that. There is parts of this are about a father and a daughter, and the mother of the family is recently deceased, and what sorrow can do to a person. Maybe it doesn't just make people sad. Maybe it also makes them sick and crazy and deranged. So let's see. What else do I have to say about this? So yeah, this is more about what sort of people would run a red room, what sort of people would watch a red room. Don't expect this isn't all about heroes or heroics. I mean, there are cops in this. The cops are terrible. Some of them are into it. The other ones seem awful. Pretty much everybody I've seen in this world is a terrible person I would never want to meet in real life. This comic not for children. It probably shouldn't be for most people.
Yeah.
But I will say art is amazing, and if you're a fan of sort of creative torture horror movies and just old gruesome indie comics that go anywhere they want to go, it might be for you. It has a lot of dark humor because, of course, people who are going to do this sort of thing, anything they think and say is going to be messed up.
Yep.
And have that dark humor edge to it. But just don't look for heroes in it, and don't look for one to escape. You can't watch it where it's like, oh, somebody's going to escape and the tables are going to get turned. I didn't get any sense of that, especially in issue number 1. So here is the 1 in 5 Ed Piskor variant. And this isn't just a character for the cover. This is a character you will meet if you choose to read this. So $15 for that is what we're charging locals and people interested. Here is the 1 in 12 rug variant, RUGG. We have these for $25. I like the chick pamphlet on the bottom there. Poker face question mark. In fact, I mean, you could tell his art is inspired in some ways by chick pamphlet art. In fact, the first guy in this, he laughs and he goes, haw, 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 H-A-W, H-A-W, H-A-W. And I first saw that from a chick pamphlet in a Waffle House restaurant.
Wow.
Yeah. And then here's the one everyone's chasing. This is the 1 in 20 Momoko variant, Peach Momoko.
How weird is it for Peach Momoko to be doing a variant for this when we have so many, like...
I think people hear her name, Peach, and they think, oh, Peach, what a nice...
Sweet.
I'm
Peach
not sure.
Peach might have a dark side.
If she read this entire thing and still chose to do a variant, she has a dark side.
Wow, how do I follow that? Probably with Star Wars. Yes, this is.
Let's cleanse the palate with some Star
Wars. I know.
Wars.
Let's pull out of that depravity hole. So this is Star Wars Bounty Hunters number 12, but it is the second prelude issue in the War of the Bounty Hunters series. So, as you can imagine, the War of the Bounty Hunters and the current ongoing series Bounty Hunters probably have a lot to do with each other, because this has been using some of the key players in this big story. So, our main character, Valance, the cyborg bounty hunter that was originally created from the original Marvel Star Wars series, has been the kind of our viewpoint in this series to the world of bounty hunting and what he thinks about it and the other bounty hunters and all of that. So this one is interesting because most of it is a flashback to what his tie-in is with Han Solo, who is kind of the MacGuffin of this story. Everybody's trying to get him, but you might find a different side to Valance and how he sees Han, and maybe he doesn't have as much of a dark side as you would think. So it's an interesting character study. You can tell this is a prelude, like, you know, it's not a filler issue, but it's like we can't jump both feet in because we haven't officially gotten Star Wars Bounty Hunters #1 or War for the Bounty Hunters
Right.
#1. So let's take a step back and look at why these characters are going to be involved in it. What's also interesting in this is in the actually the before the letters page, or kind of where you would have a letters page. The Ethan Sachs, the writer, talks about Valence and what this series has been doing so far, and that War of the Bounty Hunters is actually going to be a big kind of crescendo for bounty hunters. Not necessarily that it's ending, but that this character Valence, he says, may not make it out of the War of the Bounty Hunters alive, and it may really test him as a character and, you know, reshape what this series is going to be going forward. So I think this is cool. That this is, it's cool to see how heavy that War of the Bounty Hunters is going to affect all of the Star Wars titles, and especially Bounty Hunters. So super cool issue. A really interesting flashback, because since it's a flashback, you actually have Han in it, pre-Carbonite, and him and Valence, and you have Dengar, and you have Zuckuss and Forlom and all the bounty hunters in this one. So really cool issue. Of course, like previous, we have a Crimson variant. And also wanted to mention, of course, we have Star Wars High Republic #1 5th printing this week. I wish I could remember exactly what number I said.
That video. We made bets when High Republic, I guess, got to 2nd print.
Yes.
Where we all said how many prints.
I was at like 6 or 7. I'm getting real close.
Yeah.
So we have #1. We have #2 4th printing. And these are your, like, mostly made them black and white with kind of singular colors. And really cool because the lightsabers are still in color. And then we have #3 3rd printing. So if you're going to be a completionist, these are probably going to be some of the harder ones to get later, because I think most of the stores now have caught up.
It's slowing down the ordering.
He's slowing down the ordering on the...
Afraid to order too many.
Yeah, the other printings. So that's your Star Wars recap for the day.
And now it's time for your Heroes Reborn recap of the day. I read Heroes Reborn #3. I'm really happy that this series is actually doing well.
Yeah.
I would not have bet on this event as selling very well, but people are really digging it. It's just sort of a very fun series. Jason Aaron's having a really good time writing these. I'm having a good time reading them. So this one follows, what's his name? It follows Blur. That's his name.
Blur.
I had so many Flash characters in it because I also read Flash 770. I'll get into that later. But it follows Blur, who is the Squadron Supreme's version of the Flash. But with this, you know, it's like you read a lot of Flash and he does a lot of fast stuff, and it's always Speed Force. With this, they dial it back to what would it be like having this kind of speed. So in this, he starts out, he explains his life. He talks about how he owns 48 TVs that he watches all the time. He has he's playing 10 cell phone games. He has several dates with girls going on in different continents at the same time. You know, right away, Jason Aaron's like, forget everything you know about Flash. I'm going to pretend that I'm making a character that fast. And what are the quirks to that, you know? So after you get through some of that part, you get to his villain, who in this one is Silver Witch. And I think Silver Witch was in the first Heroes Reborn. She is Scarlet Witch, but she absorbed her brother Quicksilver's powers when he got killed. She blames Blur more than anyone for her brother's death. So using her Scarlet Witch powers, she is able to, you know, he's like, I'm fast. What are you going to do? Well, she sends him to hell. Yeah. So in this issue, he is in hell having to do all these. What would it be like to have to run races in hell? And who would you race against? That's the premise. So I'll tell you about one of them, like the major one, but he goes up against the Ghost Racer. So it's not Ghost Rider, it's a little different. Picture Ghost Rider if he could run on those bony legs. And I swear to you, one part of the race, they race up the pendant stairs, like a staircase.
Like his power.
It's funny. I mean, trust me. When I read it, I was like, "Oh my god, this is like over the line goofy," but somehow it's making me laugh.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So so that's what's happening in his. I won't tell you how it ends, but I will say the race is to the death. So I'll mention that. They have fun just exploring what a fast superhero's life would be like. So in the backup story, Captain America and Blade, they have met. I'm gonna say anything that's already happened in part one.
I know when it's a weekly series, it's like you gotta stay on it.
Yeah. So Captain America and Blade are trying to find people who remember reality how it is, and in this one, they're gonna try to get the new Phoenix Echo to possibly join with them. So next issue, which they preluded at the end of this one a little bit, is it follows Rocket Raccoon, who has been hired to take out Dr. Spectrum. And that issue is fantastic. I mean, I've gotten to read most of these ahead of time. I think I just read number 6 last night. I think number 4 was my favorite. The Rocket Raccoon one, you can't miss it. It is great. I can't wait to do the live review of it. So we got some variants. We've got the trading card variant with Blur on it. Been doing those fun trading card variants with all the Squadron Supreme members. We have the action figure variant. Everybody needs a John Tyler Christopher action figure variant. And he's doing it. Peach Momoko gets her Stormbreakers variant.
Yeah, your explanation now explains a little bit more of that.
About cover. why the Ghost Rider character. Then there is a 1 in 25 Bradshaw variant that we are selling to our pull box people and locals for $15.
Cool. Next up, I have Catwoman number 31. So this was one I was looking forward to when I read the solicitation for it, because it's kind of a heist, but the prize in this heist, in this elegant gallery opening, is Poison Ivy. Poison Ivy we haven't seen in a little while. She went through a lot during that Harley Quinn and Poison Ivy miniseries. Their relationship was really shaken up, and I don't think we've seen too much of Poison Ivy since then.
And we know where it goes because of Future State, too.
Right. So, and I feel like some of this may hint towards that. So, Catwoman, of course, goes to this fancy party and tries to steal Poison Ivy, the art installation known as Poison Ivy, out of it. So, that's a really fun story. I think that's it's very Catwoman. Like, what I want to see Catwoman do is like crawling through the rafters and switching costumes and doing all that. So that's really cool. But what I also want to make mention of with this is I was surprised when I got towards the end of it. It actually has a heavier tie in with the current run of Batman, the James Tynion Batman, than I thought. There is a pretty prominent character that we've seen set up in the most recent issues of Batman make an appearance in this, and a little bit more explanation of some of the stuff that he's doing, and maybe there's a character that we have seen before in Catwoman, but this is kind of her first appearance outside of her costume, and a little bit more explanation of who or what she is and her name. So I think, keep your eye on Catwoman, because I feel like they're actually doing stuff that when I saw all the stuff at the end, I'm like, oh wow, this is Batman stuff here too. So really cool issue, really fun, but definitely keep with Catwoman, because I think it's only getting better. You got this beautiful Jenny Frison variant with Catwoman, Poison Ivy. I think we're already running low on this one today. I've seen so many people pick it up. Just, it's so good.
Okay, so time to review Batman Fortnite Zero Point number 3. I read this one a good while
Yeah, you
back.
did.
They gave us a chance to read this one a while back. This is the one everyone was waiting on, even the people who thought Batman Fortnite was just a goofy idea, because in it, it is the first meeting and battle between Batman and Snake Eyes from G.I. Joe. And what I like is this, and I think there's been enough bad examples of fights between major people that I think a lot of authors know what to write now.
Yep.
Where before it was like, oh, they punch each other once, then they shake hands, and that's the end of it. That is not how this goes down, at least not that quickly. So it begins with a lot of inner office messages between the people, seemingly the people in Fortnite, the people who are running this thing, about how they're trying to keep everyone in this time loop, because that's what's happening. Is every 22 minutes it's a loop, and Batman's memory gets erased. He's been sort of memento keeping up with things somehow. He's already gotten Catwoman out of the loop. He found there was one little spot where you could get the person out of the loop. He doesn't know where it goes. Well, now a new person's been added. It is Snake Eyes, and these inner office memos reveal that they're very happy that Snake Eyes is there because Batman has been kicking everyone's butt so bad. They're like, oh wow, this guy might actually be able to compete. So Batman and Snake Eyes meet, and yes, I would say a good half of this comic is them fighting. It has very good art for what it is, and they battle in all kinds of ways to such a pinnacle that here's a world where everyone just fights for 22 minutes. People die, people don't, they're back, they fight again. Well, it gets where everyone there, Batman and Snake Eyes battle is so epic, everyone stops battling and watches them.
That's awesome.
That's what happens in this. I mean, it won't ruin the moment. Trust me, it's cool. And all else I'll say is by the end, there's one thing that they didn't count on with Snake Eyes and Batman being around each other, and that is they both certainly know sign language.
No.
So in a world where no one can talk, how long until these two, kind of start figuring some things out? And by the end, something major happens. There will be full-on dialogue starting next issue. In fact, this issue ends with some dialogue for sure. The characters can talk. And another major anti-villain from DC has appeared at the end and is sort of threatening things. So that's my general review of that. Mainly, I wanted to talk about Batman fighting Snake Eyes. This is another issue that retailers had to order before number 1 came out. So the orders are low. It's going to be scarce. Just want to let you guys know, go in your stores today, because it's out today, for stores that sell DC on Tuesdays. We're allowed to sell it Tuesdays. Some stores still wait till Wednesday. And get your copy right now. We're doing one per person. Here is the variant cover by Jim Lee.
Jim Lee heard the concept. He's like, I'm doing a variant cover.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm doing it.
I totally bet that's how that went down. And I think the Jim Lee one is even more scarce. So
I think it's cool, and we've had a lot of customers, some dads and moms have come in and be like, I got this for my son. He asked me to come by and pick this up so he could get the code that's in it, because this issue, like all the other ones, has the code to unlock digital content. They're like, but he actually read it and enjoyed it and was excited about the next one, was talking about it. I think this is a great way to get some kids who maybe haven't read comics before and necessarily don't love reading or whatever. This is a great appeal to them with the stuff they like, instead of being like, come over here and check out this stuff. It's like, no, you already like this. And in Fortnite is, Battle Royale as it is, there is a storyline that's very loosely kind of dropped here and there through little cutscenes and everything. And this is cool because it's actually giving you some solid storytelling in that world that we haven't gotten so far. So I hope even after this, maybe they continue with some kind of Fortnite series or whatever, because I think it's a great opportunity to get some new readers into comics and just getting some people to read that maybe don't necessarily like to read.
I can't agree with you more. And that's why when kids come through our store, even if the parents aren't buying them a comic, we give them a comic of some sort.
Yeah, yeah.
So
they will leave with a comic or a comic coin when they come back. They can redeem for a comic.
Yep.
So, yeah. Next up, we have The Many Deaths of Layla Star #2. I really liked issue 1 when it came out around a month ago. This is from Boom Studios. Ram V is the writer. And this is, of course, about the god of death who loses her job because on Earth a baby has been born that will one day grow up to either invent or discover immortality. And basically she got her pink slip, said, you know what, no hard feelings, you can live out the rest of your days on Earth. And she is chosen to be put in, I believe it's Dubai, near where this child is born. And it's kind of implied she's going to do whatever she can to get rid of this kid so she can keep her job. It's a really crazy, fun premise with really cool art. And issue 2 continues that. So she is now on Earth, but she still retains some of her godhood, as in she can speak to this crow named Ka, which I think is, I mean, why wouldn't a crow be named Ka? And this crow says, "Oh, I'm a funeral crow. My job is when they throw rice at funerals, I go there and pick it up." And she's like, "Oh, I've never met a talking crow before," and it's like, "I've never met a talking human before." It's fun. It's very it reminds me of older like Vertigo comics with like Sandman, Fables, that kind of thing. That's feels very literary. You know, this isn't about the action or the big fight scene or anything like that. This is given a premise and an exploration of that premise. So the story deviates to the story about a child who befriends someone who works out in the fields of this home, and his parents are like, "We don't interact with him. You know, he's out there doing his job. He's not allowed inside." You kind of get this idea of this this class of people, and explores how this child discovers death in his own way. And in that way, it did feel very much like a Sandman or whatever, where we take like this side story to tell about kind of the theme of the book, but then at the end, how do we tie it back in with this overall story? And is kind of it's hard to explain it and not make it seem kind of, you know, dull or one note. But this is such a well told story with interesting visuals and kind of this mythological feeling to the story. I really liked it. Issue 2 was just as good, if not better, than #1. This is for your mature reader, not in the way of like an R-rated, you know, movie with violence and gore and language. This is mature as in like a very a classic book with high concepts that you want to read this slow because you're picking up on some subtleties in the dialogue and the text and the art that's really, really cool. So I highly recommend Many Deaths of Layla Star. You also learn why it's called that. And I don't think you'll be disappointed, even if you're a little hesitant about, you know, the speed it sounds like it is or whatever. I think it's going to be very rewarding and a really good, even when it comes out in trade, a very solid read.
I think the cover has the atmosphere you described.
Yeah, yeah. So we have, this one may be a little hard to see. This is the foil variant, of course, where if you can't tell, she's holding a child with swords pointed all around it.
If I have to fix my hair later and there's not a mirror, I'm just...
Yeah, you can basically see yourself in it. we have the 1 in 25 decal variant that we are selling to our customers and locals for $20. And then we have the 1 per store variant, which is the version of the previous one for $30.
All right. I read Way of X number 2. Like number 1, there is a lot of story to unpack in this one. Something has been eroding the culture of all the mutants in Krakoa. The culture is just sort of decaying. They're not acting very heroic. They're doing sort of real barbaric things. And Professor X, of course, this happens in issue 1. He goes to Nightcrawler and he says, "You're the one to figure this out. You have the right heart, the right spirit. You won't be, tempted to be bad. But something's affecting us." In fact, Professor X says he thinks it's an Omega level mutant. By the end of issue 1, Nightcrawler has run into Legion. At least in sort of psionic spirit.
However you run into Legion.
And so the question was Legion behind it? It didn't seem like it by the end of issue 1. And I can already say it doesn't seem like it's Legion. Legion seems more of a sort of a hopefully semi-useful person to Nightcrawler in this issue number 2. So it starts out, and this is why I had to tell you it's probably not Legion, because otherwise I couldn't really talk about it. Too much of this issue has to do with Legion. So Legion tells Nightcrawler, "Hey, there's something in your mind. I see it, and I'll get it out. But then you have to do a favor for me." Nightcrawler, of course, isn't able to say yay or nay.
Yeah.
Legion just does it. When he goes into Nightcrawler's mind, that part's really interesting. It's not at all what I expected. In fact, even Legion says, "Wow, this isn't what I expected your mind to look like. You got a lot more going on in here. You're under a lot more pressure than I thought." So he seemingly does find something that has been placed there. And Legion kind of surmises whoever did this is somebody very, very powerful. So the favor he asks Nightcrawler, of course, he says, "You need to be at this location in 10 minutes. And he gives him the location like ages away. But of course, it's Nightcrawler. He can teleport. So Nightcrawler's all like, who do I get? Who do I get to help me?" So he grabs a few people who he trusts and who are available, and he gets over to this location, which happens to be a military installation where they're doing some very bad things that may have to do with Legion himself. At this place, I have to say, Nightcrawler does something, and I'll have to keep reading the series, but it's a bit of a departure. Like, he goes against a moral code in a way I didn't think he would. And he reasons it out a bit, but then kind of just goes with his gut. But what he does, I don't know. It's settled in a weird way with me that I hope they explore. They have to explore it more. And I'm not saying it was just the way he went about it. It was so weird. That's the most I can say. I can't reveal it. But what I will say is by the end, Legion does reveal the name of who he thinks the Omega level mutant is, who is messing with everybody.
Ooh.
And it's not a new character, but it looks like this new character has taken on a new identity that's already been named in the previous issue. And if it is who Legion says it is, we're talking about maybe the most powerful mutant out there ever, or who's ever been out there. One that there's not a level that they have named. It's more powerful than Omega.
Oh wow!
So that's Way of the X number 2 without spoiling it at all. And let's see, we have this one variant here.
I imagine that's a little bit of Nightcrawler's dream, or his inside his head.
No, actually, this is more, I think, the villain behind things, who in issue 1 they referred to as the Patchwork Man.
Oh yeah.
So
wow, it's only on issue 2. I feel like we've talked about.
Cy Spurrier puts a lot into the issue, and I have to say his dialogue keeps things going fast. In fact, sometimes I'm like, that's a little fast. I have to reread a part.
Yeah.
But, there's only 24 pages of comics. You got to cram that stuff in.
Cy Spurrier's a big fan of Legion. He wrote that back Marvel Now Legion series. He always works Legion into his stuff, so it does not surprise me to hear that he's done that.
Yeah.
So a cool one this week for you big fans of the Immortal Hulk. This is Immortal Hulk: Time of the Monsters. So I've read some of Immortal Hulk. I have not read the entire thing up till now. I know about like the Green Door and some of that stuff. But this is one of the one-shots they've been doing along the way that flesh out some of the side stories, and I don't know, they're interesting one-shots that are tied in with the main story, but are not like the most super necessary ones to read. But this one was really cool. So this promised in the beginning to show the very first, I guess, Gamma monster.
Yeah, the first Hulk.
The first Hulk. Yeah.
In history.
So this takes place, I believe, 9,500 years ago. So this goes, way back. And it's very much like your tribal pseudo caveman, not quite like living in caves. But they are hunting this big green beast that has been roaming the land and causing a lot of destruction and everything. So I feel like I maybe missed out on some of the subtleties or some of the ties in with the main series because I'm not caught up with it. So I think people who have been reading it will, get all of that and really enjoy the story. I really like the stuff with this first Hulk. I just thought, for the action in it and stuff, it's really cool. It's like this series has been a lot of like body horror. We've seen like the stuff early on where Hulk was chopped up and put in different jars. We've seen where he gets kind of like emaciated and everything. This has definitely some of that as well, which is always still kind of done in, since it's Hulk, not funny way, but like it doesn't take itself too dark and grim seriously. So there's some stuff with this that don't eat the green meat, we'll say. It doesn't end well. So this is really cool. We're getting really close to the end of Immortal Hulk, and I think this is just another layer to the many layered, layered pie. I can't think of what's layered. The story of Immortal Hulk. So if you're reading Immortal Hulk, you'll definitely want to pick this one up. If you're looking for a fun one and done story, you'll definitely like the stuff with the Hulk in it and the kind of Twilight Zone weird version of Hulk you see in this. But I know for me, I didn't quite understand everything in it, but I still think it was a really good issue.
So, Nightwing number 80. I read that today. I've really been enjoying Nightwing since it came back with issue 78 with Tom Taylor writing it. He just kind of has refreshed the series and refreshed the character in general. If you like the last two, I highly recommend this one. I think it was just as enjoyable. So last issue ended with the shadowy cameo of a new villain who has a device that hits people in the chest and sucks out their heart. And apparently he's been using this on homeless people, just sort of working his way up, I guess maybe testing it, we don't know. So this issue, at the bottom, it even says, introducing Heartless. So that is a villain's name. And word on the street is, all the kids who are afraid of him, all the orphans, say that he doesn't have a heart, and that's why he takes others. So sort of like a Tin Woodsman gone mad or something. But it says introducing Heartless. I'm going to just go ahead and pull off the Band-Aid and tell you there is not a full first appearance of him in this. This issue has a lot to do with Heartless. It has a lot to do with Nightwing trying to find out who he is, where his victims are, anyone who has survived him. But all you get is a cameo. A better cameo than last issue. Last issue is just shadowy. You get to see Heartless, but I'm just letting people know who are trying to pick this up for first full appearance. It's going to be next issue. In fact, next issue actually has Heartless on the cover.
Yep.
So what does happen in this issue? Nightwing ends up needing help. So he gets help from Barbara Gordon, who has been in the issues since the run began, since Tom Taylor took over. Her and Nightwing are kind of closer than ever. But he reaches out. He needs help from his Bat brother, Tim Drake. So we don't really see them just hanging.
Yeah.
Like, when they get together, it's usually the whole family is there. So it's kind of really cool to see them interacting, just them. And they have to track down one of the victims who got away from Heartless to try to find some things out. And of course, as this is going on, more villains show up who they think might be related. But no, it seems like Tom Taylor's setting up another sort of story that's going to be springing out of this as well, because it doesn't seem like they are really working for Heartless. It seems like this Heartless person is sort of his own thing, which I can't see a lot of gangs wanting to work with somebody who
You'd always
that.
be watching behind your back, waiting for your heart to get sucked out.
Yeah, so there's a lot of good conversation in this, and I don't want to ruin all the conversation by telling it all. So what I'll say is who does Nightwing think is the best Robin ever out of all the Robins? What is his current relationship with Barbara Gordon, considering all the time they've been spending together, and the fact that this issue starts and she's leaving his apartment. It's the morning, and does he really send Tim Drake on an important mission without his costume and walking his new dog this issue? The answer to all these things is yes. All these things are answered in this issue. It's another great issue, but I have to say, it is time for them to really reveal Heartless. I want to see this Heartless person more than just a cameo. Luckily, they're on the cover for next issue. I think they'll really be in it. So another excellent issue of Nightwing. And we have the variant here. Another good variant for Nightwing too.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're digging the past ones, it's just they all have that same style, the acrobatics and the blues.
Yeah, they're really nice. Next up, we have one, just to mention real quick, this is Joker #2, but this is the second printing with that really awesome cover. Of course, this one sold out. It was super hot because it was the first appearance of Vengeance, Bane's daughter, taking on the new mantle of Bane. So a lot of people missed out because, I mean, we ordered a ton of it. We sold out probably same day, probably that morning. We sold out of all of #2. And a lot of people have heard really good things about Joker and have been coming in trying to get it. So finally, if you missed out, you can read the first, I think, what we're up to issue 3 now of Joker. So it's a great series. This is a great cover. Definitely check it out.
Okay, my last major one to review. I have some other goodies to show you guys, though. Flash #770. So Wally West has been getting thrown around in time. He ends up in different time periods, but he inhabits the body of somebody in that time. In this one, he ends up in Jay Garrick's body, and it's during World War II, and it happens to be when Jay Garrick is caught by the Nazis. He's been in like a Nazi jail for like 5 weeks at this point. But the story starts before that. The story starts with Jay Garrick back then. It shows how the president comes to him and the superhero the Ray. I don't know how many people know the Ray. The Ray he's very powerful.
Yeah.
Him and Jay Garrick are very different personalities, and the president goes to them and he's like, look, you guys can help us win the war. Hitler's about to do something really terrible. Go stop it. So they try to stop it, but as I've kind of already revealed, it doesn't go their way. They get captured. Like, what could capture the Flash and the Ray? Like, you just have to see it. But they get captured, and while they're in captivity, they learn that Hitler has acquired a very powerful magic and religious relic.
Classic Indiana
Not
Jones
not
stuff.
not Ark of the Covenant, but something along those lines that is going to give him just all the power he needs to win. So, of course, Wally West ends up inside of Jay Garrick's body, and with the help of the Ray, which I think one of my favorite parts of this is the Ray and Garrick, they don't get along at all. They're very different. Well, because they've been in captivity so long, they've gotten closer, and it was really cool to watch that happen. So the Ray now has to help out Wally, even though Wally does not tell him. So he just seems really confused and really weird because Wally is doing future things. Like I think at one point he says something about Google. Yeah, and the Ray's like, "What?" That word would sound so weird back in 1944 or whatever year they're in this. And at the same time, Wally West has a way. He is communicating with Barry Allen in the future. He's been doing that all these issues. So meanwhile, he's saying to Barry Allen, "Hey, look this stuff up in history." And in fact, they even call Jay Garrick. He's like, "Call Jay Garrick. How does this all end up?" So I mean, just again, just a really fun book. And I won't tell you how it ends, but I will say they do a preview panel for the next book. You get to see where Wally's going to end up next time. And I'm really excited for the next one because it has to do with the Legion of supervillains, but from the old Super Friends TV show. I'm not
even
kidding.
the art looks like...
I showed Andy right away. I was like, do you see what this is? They are retconning in, or I guess just writing in, a character who is never on that show in the style of the show. I hope the whole comic's that way, that Wally West is going to be in. So if you like Super Friends and you like that silly Legion of Super Friends with Solomon Grundy and Scarecrow, that's the next issue. So, I mean, that's so cool.
Flash, they've been doing such a good job with, we had Joshua Williamson's run, which was great, but I mean, that was a deep run, no pun intended. The character defining and all of that, all leading up to Future State and all that. And it seems like now they're like, hey, let's take a step back and do some of the fun, classic kind of Flash stories of time travel and who does he run into along the way and bring his family in there. So,
and even though there's the threat of what's making this happen, how can they stop it, of him getting tossed around time, really these are just one shots. That's what they are, and they're having a lot of fun with them. I really wanted to show that last panel with the Legion of Supervillains, but we're spoiler free here. It would tell you who Wally's going to be in and what character they're putting into that. And so I couldn't. I was almost going to cover it up and show some of it just to show, look, they're using that art style. So
really cool. So actually, I wasn't planning on talking about Stray Dogs because this is, I believe, issue 4.
Penultimate.
Yeah, the penultimate issue, even though we do know that there's going to be a free comic book day issue of Stray Dogs. It's a new story, so could possibly continue after this. I just read this just on the off chance because I've been reading each of the issues that comes out. I wasn't ready to start in on all the stuff we were doing for the show, so I was like, I'm going to go ahead and just flip through Stray Dogs. And once again, I think this is one of the... Let me preface this. It's not in the normal way scary, but I do think this is one of the scariest comics coming out. One of the most uncomfortable. And all of that still with the art style of like All Dogs Go to Heaven, which is, I mean, appropriate for this series. But this issue, the dogs explore more about what they can remember about their former owners and their new owner that one of the dogs believes is a murderer. And it ends with a shocking page, if you've been following it, that's just kind of horrendous. But I still think this series is... People are going to look back on it, or hopefully it's going to continue, and it's going to be... A lot of people are going to be talking about this. I think just the weird cartoony art style with the story that's so dark and... but having our protagonists be little dogs is such an interesting idea that I had to show it off. And
If Don Bluth Studios is still around, they just need to go ahead and do it.
this is such like
and if they're not still around, they need to come back together, reform
Voltron style to make like an HBO miniseries. Because I don't want to see this live action. This whole book works because of the art style in it as well. So, and also just want to show off the variant cover, which this is one of our hardest variant covers to pinpoint which movie this was based off of. I think
it was The Demons.
The Demons, I believe. Yeah.
I need to go watch that now. I don't know how they picked one that I haven't seen. Between Megan and myself, we're both big horror buffs, so we've seen just about everything. All right, so a few others to let you know about. Berserker #1 has gone back to 4th print.
Talk about mirror.
Yep, to blind you with some Keanu Reeves. Look at that.
You can basically see the screen.
So this 4th print, once again, a lot of retailers probably underordered it. We ordered a good bit because, I mean, it's Berserker. People love it, and they want those prints. So I think this is already selling for over cover price online. We still got it. We might be doing one per customer. I don't recall. So that's out, and
I love this one.
Berserker #2 has gone to 3rd print. That is a cover by Dan Mora. Excellent cover of Berserker. When he was a child, but you know, he started out 80,000 years ago, so there were some saber-toothed tigers still to fight around back then. So just want everyone to know about that when you go in your local store tomorrow.
I have one more to show off, and this one, another one we weren't planning on doing, but I just think it's so cool. This is TMNT Best of Splinter. So we've had the 4 Turtles they've done the best of, and now this is Splinter. This collects some of the key issues and stories and everything, not just from the original run of Ninja Turtles, not just from the most recent. This has stuff that's like tied in when they did, I believe, the Archie series. They'll look more like the original cartoon. This has some of the one-shots that came later, stuff that Peterson did the art for from Mouse Guard. Just really, really cool stories, and it does show in the back that the next one they're doing is a Casey Jones. So they're continuing with this. Hopefully, I want to see... I was talking about this with someone yesterday. I want to see a Bebop and Rocksteady version of this. I want to see a Shredder. I want to see an April O'Neil. Like, but all with these awesome covers, all in the big collage.
I mean, they've got, I'm sure they're going to do, Shredder, April.
Eventually we'll get to Muckman and Mondo Gecko. Hopefully, I mean, just...
Baxter
Stockman. We're going to have one that he's only in his human form and the one he's only in his fly form. I mean, keep it going, IDW. Cause
best of Mousers.
It's it's basically essentially your like best of Stormtroopers.
Yeah.
It's just every time they got kicked around, that'd be great.
All right, I just have 2 more things to show off. The first is Geiger #1 3rd print with the Gary Frank cover. That is out tomorrow. I don't know if your store is like us. They shorted us about half of our copies. I like Geiger a lot, so I ordered a lot, fortunately. So we didn't run out, but it might be that sometimes they do secret allocations, you know, where it's like, there's not enough. We'll just send everybody half. So I don't know if that is the case. I just wanted to mention that. And then Ultra Mega #3 is out tomorrow. I just wanted to show off some of the variants. The ratio variants. This is the 1 in 5 variant that we are selling for $20.
It's the Ryan Otley variant. I maybe got 2 of them.
And then here is the 1 in 10 variant that we're selling for $30. Or maybe you can find it at your store. I heard that there's an Ultraman series Netflix has just optioned.
Yeah.
So it seems like all this kaiju stuff is not going away.
No. The groundwork for all of that hype is in comics. People are reading Ultra Mega and Trials of Ultraman. They're getting excited and they're like, we want more kaiju stuff.
Yeah. The people behind Ultraman are like, we better go ahead and option our stuff quick because otherwise they're just going to go with one of these other properties that is clearly influenced by it. So, all right, well, that's it. That is
Woo.
our Tuesday show where we try to go over most of the comics we
Yeah.
think everybody wants to hear about. We don't have all the time to read everything, so if we missed anything, we apologize. I mean, we literally start reading this stuff at like between noon and 1 up until the show, taking notes, looking up things in case Andy's showing me, have you ever seen this guy
I know
before? And
it's a
I'm doing
constant
the
like, is
same.
this person been in something before, or they look like this other person, or they have the same name?
We thank you, each and every one of you who joins us every week. We hope you learn something. We hope you have a good time doing this like we do. And we will be back on Friday with Megan, our third host, doing comics from the future.
Yep.
Where we talk about all the comics on final order for that week and show off some of the covers we show off. We get like hours after release. Like it's one of probably the first places you can see some of the covers. So hopefully you will join us this Friday. Until then, have a great day, and we hope you pick up some good stuff at your local comic store.